My name is Kent, and I am 54 years old. Standing in that upscale private dining room at the Metropolitan Grill, surrounded by my son Brandon's wealthy friends, I felt completely out of place. I clutched a small wrapped package in my hands, a wooden picture frame I had crafted myself with a photograph of Brandon as a smiling 5-year-old. The room buzzed with conversation about internships at prestigious firms, European vacations, and career ambitions. Brandon had barely acknowledged me since I arrived. His eyes kept darting away whenever our gazes met, as if my presence embarrassed him. I did not know it then, but the next 10 minutes would shatter whatever remained of our relationship, and the hour after that would change everything. If you have ever been dismissed by someone you love, drop a comment and tell me how you handled it. And before we dive into what happened that night, let me know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button and subscribe, because what unfolds next will show you why sometimes silence is the most powerful response. You will not want to miss this. Let me take you back to how my life unfolded to this point. In 1995, I met Gerald in Seattle, Washington. We were both 20-something software engineers working at the same technology company, young and ambitious and full of dreams. I was 25. Gerald was 26. We connected immediately over our shared passion for coding and problem-solving. Our relationship blossomed quickly, and by 1998, we were married in a small ceremony with close friends and family. 4 years later, in 2002, we welcomed Brandon into our lives through a surrogate mother. Those early years were magical. I remember holding him as a newborn, his tiny fingers wrapping around mine, and thinking I would do anything to protect this child. Gerald and I worked hard at our careers while sharing parenting duties. We bought a beautiful house in Bellevue with a backyard where Brandon learned to throw his first baseball. We took family trips to the San Juan Islands. We read bedtime stories and built blanket forts and celebrated every milestone. For 10 years we were happy. Brandon grew from a gurgling baby into a bright, energetic boy who loved dinosaurs and baseball. Gerald advanced in his career, eventually becoming a senior engineer. I did well too, working on complex software projects that challenged and fulfilled me. We had everything we thought we wanted: a loving family financial security, a comfortable home filled with laughter and warmth. Then in 2012, everything crumbled. Gerald met Simone at his company. She was 25 years old, a marketing specialist with ambition and charm. I did not notice at first. Gerald started working late more often, attending more conferences, being distant when he was home. When I finally confronted him, he admitted the affair. 6 months later, he asked for a divorce. The man I had loved for 17 years, the father of our 10-year-old son, was leaving me for someone younger, and as I would later realize, someone who shared his newly developed appetite for luxury and status. The divorce in 2013 was civil on the surface, but devastating underneath. I did not fight for primary custody, even though it tore me apart. Brandon was 11 years old, and I thought stability mattered more than my hurt feelings. Gerald had the bigger house, the higher income, the resources to provide what I thought Brandon needed. So I agreed to shared custody that heavily favored Gerald. I would see Brandon every other weekend and 1 evening a week. It seemed reasonable at the time. It felt like the mature, selfless thing to do. What I did not anticipate was how profoundly the divorce would affect me psychologically. The tech industry, which had once excited me, now felt suffocating. The long hours, the constant pressure to innovate faster than the competition, the endless meetings and deadlines, combined with the emotional devastation of losing my marriage and my daily presence in my son's life, I burned out completely. By early 2014, I could barely get out of bed in the morning. I felt hollow, purposeless, exhausted in a way that sleep could not fix. So I made a decision that shocked everyone who knew me. I quit my engineering job. Friends thought I was having a breakdown. My family worried I was throwing away a lucrative career. But I knew I needed something different, something simple and honest and uncomplicated. I needed work that left my mind free to heal. That is when I started Clean Start services. At first, it was just me with a bucket, some cleaning supplies, and a used van. I posted ads on community boards and websites. My first client was a busy nurse with 3 kids who needed help keeping her house in order. I spent 4 hours scrubbing floors, wiping surfaces, organizing clutter. When she came home and saw what I had done, she cried with relief. "Thank you so much," she said. "You have no idea what this means." In that moment, I felt something I had not felt in months. Purpose. I had helped someone in a tangible, immediate way. Their life was better because of my work. I built the business slowly. By 2015, I had 3 employees and a steady roster of clients. We served middle-class families in the Seattle area, people who worked long hours and needed help maintaining their homes. The work was physical but satisfying. I loved the simplicity of it. You see a mess, you clean it, and at the end of the day, you can see exactly what you have accomplished. There is no ambiguity, no office politics, no abstract metrics, just clean counters, vacuumed floors, and grateful clients. The business brought in about $50,000 a year, enough for me to live comfortably in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. I did not need much. I had learned through my divorce and burnout that happiness does not come from accumulating possessions or climbing corporate ladders. It comes from living authentically, doing work that aligns with your values, and maintaining your peace of mind. Meanwhile, Gerald's life went in the opposite direction. His career skyrocketed. He became a vice president at a major technology corporation, earning over $400,000 annually. Simone climbed her own ladder, becoming a marketing director with a salary that pushed their combined household income past $800,000 a year. They moved into a sprawling mansion on Mercer Island worth $4 million. They bought luxury cars, took exotic vacations, and joined exclusive clubs. Most recently, they purchased a vacation home in Malibu, California, for $2.5 million. Simone posted photos constantly on social media, showing off their beach house, their designer furniture, their glamorous lifestyle. Everything was curated to project success, wealth, and status. And Brandon grew up immersed in all of this from age 11 onward. He went from living in our comfortable but modest Bellevue home to living in a mansion with every material advantage imaginable. At first, Brandon still seemed to love both his fathers equally. He was excited to see me on my weekends. We would go to baseball games, cook meals together in my small kitchen, watch movies on my old couch. He did not seem to care that my apartment was small or that we could not afford expensive outings. He just seemed happy to spend time with me. But as he entered his teenage years, I watched him change. Around age 15 or 16, he started making excuses not to visit. He would say he had too much homework or that he wanted to hang out with friends. When I did see him, he seemed uncomfortable in my apartment, as if the modest surroundings embarrassed him. He stopped inviting me to school events, claiming he had forgotten to tell me about them. When I showed up anyway, he would barely acknowledge me in front of his friends. By the time Brandon went to the University of Washington at 18, Our relationship had deteriorated significantly. He rarely called me. He ignored most of my texts. When we did talk, the conversations were brief and superficial. He never wanted to hear about my work or my life. Instead, he would talk about vacations with Gerald and Simone, about the expensive gifts they bought him, about their connections and their lifestyle. It was clear he had absorbed their values completely. Still, I never stopped trying. I sent care packages to his dorm. I called every week, even when he did not answer. I showed up to his college graduation, even though he had not explicitly invited me. I attended his baseball games freshman year, before he quit the team to focus on networking and internships. I loved him unconditionally, even as I felt him slipping further and further away. And now here I was at his 23rd birthday party, holding a handmade gift that suddenly felt pathetic next to the expensive presents everyone else had brought. I told myself it would be okay. I told myself that Brandon would appreciate the thought and effort. I was wrong. The private dining room Gerald had reserved was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked downtown Seattle's glittering skyline. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. White tablecloths covered elegantly set tables. About 30 guests milled around, all young professionals, dressed in expensive business casual attire. I recognized a few faces from Brandon's university days, but most were strangers, probably colleagues from his internship at a consulting firm. I arrived wearing my best suit, a navy blue outfit I had purchased in 2013, right before the divorce was finalized. It was a decade old now, slightly dated in its cut, but I had kept it clean and well pressed. My shoes were polished. My shirt was crisp. I looked presentable, I thought, even if I did not look wealthy. In my hands was my gift wrapped carefully in brown craft paper, tied with twine. Inside was the wooden frame I had spent 2 weeks crafting in my small apartment. I had sanded the wood until it was smooth as silk, stained it a rich walnut color, and fitted it with a photograph I treasured. The photo showed Brandon at 5 years old, grinning with a gap where his front tooth had fallen out, holding a plastic baseball bat. I had taken that picture at his first Little League practice. It captured pure joy, innocent happiness, a time before divorce and money and status had complicated everything. As I entered the room, I immediately felt the weight of not belonging. Everyone else seemed to know each other, laughing and exchanging stories about mutual acquaintances and shared experiences. They talked about their jobs in finance and technology and consulting. They mentioned trips to Europe and Asia. They casually name-dropped expensive restaurants and exclusive clubs. I stood near the entrance holding my gift, trying to decide where to go. Gerald spotted me first. He walked over with Simone at his side. "Oh, Kent," he said, extending his hand for a business-like handshake. "Glad you could make it." His tone was polite, but carried no warmth. We were strangers now, connected only by the sun we shared. Simone smiled tightly, her perfectly applied makeup and designer dress making me feel even more out of place. She did not shake my hand or hug me. She just gave a little wave and said, "Hi," before turning to greet someone else. I heard her say to a nearby guest, "That is Brandon's other father," emphasizing the word other in a way that made it clear I was secondary, less important, an afterthought. The guest glanced at me with polite disinterest and quickly returned to their conversation with Simone. I felt invisible. Then Brandon appeared from the crowd. At 23, he had grown into a handsome young man. He was tall, well-built, with Gerald's strong jawline and my brown eyes. He wore an expensive button-down shirt in crisp white, paired with designer slacks and leather shoes that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. He was laughing at something someone had said, his whole face lit up with confidence and charm. When he saw me, the laughter faded. His expression shifted to something I could not quite read. Not anger, not happiness, just a kind of resigned acknowledgement. He walked over slowly, as if approaching an unpleasant obligation. "Hey," he said flatly. Just that one word. No hug, no smile, no thank you for coming. "Happy birthday, Brandon," I said, trying to keep my voice warm and steady. "I brought you something." I held out the wrapped frame. He took it without really looking at it, and placed it on a nearby gift table already piled high with professionally wrapped boxes and envelopes that clearly contained checks or gift cards. "Thanks," he muttered, already turning away. I watched him walk back to his friends, rejoining their conversation, as if I had never existed. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to do, feeling the familiar ache of being unwanted by my own child. Finally, I made my way to an empty seat at a table in the far corner of the room, away from the center of activity. 2 people were already seated there, a young couple in their mid-20s. The woman wore a tailored dress and pearls. The man wore a suit that fit perfectly. They looked up when I sat down and offered polite smiles. "Hi there," the woman said. "I am Jessica, and this is my boyfriend, Ryan. We went to UW with Brandon." "Oh, nice to meet you," I replied. "I am Kent, Brandon's father." They both nodded, and Jessica asked the inevitable question. "So what do you do, Kent?" "I run a cleaning service." I answered honestly. "I have a small business where we help families keep their homes organized and clean." "Oh, that is nice," Ryan said, with the kind of polite disinterest that told me he considered my work unimpressive. Jessica added, "That sounds helpful," before immediately turning to Ryan to discuss something about their upcoming trip to Italy. I sat there quietly eating my salad, feeling increasingly like I should not have come. Dinner was served an elaborate multi-course meal with wine pairings. I ate mechanically, barely tasting the food. Around me, conversations flowed about internships and job offers, about real estate prices and investment strategies, about who was dating whom and who had gotten engaged. I contributed nothing because I had nothing to contribute that these people would find interesting. My life of cleaning houses and living modestly did not fit into their world of ambition and acquisition. After dinner, the servers cleared the plates and brought out an enormous birthday cake, 3 tiers covered in elegant fondant decorations. Everyone gathered around as Brandon stood at the head of the table. Gerald made a toast about how proud he was of Brandon, how successful Brandon was becoming, how bright his future looked. Everyone clapped. Simone took dozens of photos. Brandon beamed under all the attention. Then it was time for gifts. Brandon started opening them one by one. From Gerald and Simone, he unwrapped a large box containing a brand new MacBook Pro top of the line, worth at least $3,000. Brandon's face exploded with joy. "Oh my God, this is incredible," he shouted, hugging Gerald and then Simone. Everyone applauded. Several friends whistled in appreciation. "Way to go, Mr. and Mrs. Hart," someone called out. Simone basked in the praise, smiling broadly. Brandon continued opening gifts. A designer watch from one friend, a gift card for $500 to an upscale restaurant from another, expensive cologne, high-end headphones. Each gift was met with enthusiastic thanks and more applause. The pile of opened gifts grew, each one more lavish than the last. Finally, Brandon picked up my gift. The brown paper and simple twine looked shabby next to all the glossy wrapping paper and ribbon. He untied the twine and tore the paper slowly. When he pulled out the wooden frame with the photograph, he paused. He stared at it for several seconds without saying anything. The room grew quieter as people watched, curious about his reaction. One of his friends leaned over. "What is it?" the friend asked. Brandon held it up slightly. "Just a picture frame," he said, his tone flat and dismissive. He set it down on the table without another word, without a thank you, without even looking at me. Some people glanced at the frame, then at me, then quickly looked away. The friend who had asked shrugged and turned to talk to someone else. Another friend, perhaps trying to be polite, or perhaps genuinely curious, turned to me. "So what do you do, sir?" he asked loud enough for several people to hear. I opened my mouth to answer. "I have a cleaning business," I began. Before I could say more, Brandon cut me off. His voice rose above the background chatter. "He cleans houses," Brandon said. "You know, like just ordinary work." The room went silent. Everyone stopped talking and turned to look at us. Brandon seemed emboldened by the attention. He continued, his voice clear and cold. "You are just ordinary. You clean other people's houses. Dad's new wife just bought a vacation home in Malibu." The words hit me like a physical blow. Ordinary, dismissive, humiliating. Spoken loud enough for every single person in that room to hear. I sat frozen, feeling 30 pairs of eyes on me. Some people looked uncomfortable and glanced down at their plates. Others looked curious, waiting to see how I would respond. Gerald shifted in his seat, but said nothing. Simone's smile widened slightly, as if she was pleased someone had finally stated what she had been thinking all along. Brandon stood there, not with anger or cruelty on his face, but with something worse. Indifference. As if pointing out my ordinariness was simply stating an obvious fact that everyone already knew. For a long moment, I sat completely still. Part of me wanted to stand up and defend myself. Part of me wanted to shout back to tell Brandon and everyone in that room about my past accomplishments, about the patent, about the money sitting in my investment accounts. Part of me wanted to expose the truth and watch Brandon's face change from smug dismissal to shock. But another part of me, the part that had spent the last decade learning to live authentically and quietly, knew that defending myself would be pointless. If my son could only respect me when he knew I had money, then his respect was worthless. If I had to wave a bank statement in his face to earn his love, then I did not want that kind of love. Real respect, real love should not be conditional on wealth or status. It should be based on character, on how you treat people, on the choices you make, and the values you live by. So instead of arguing or explaining or defending, I did something that seemed to confuse everyone. I smiled. Not a big smile, not a sarcastic smile, just a small, sad smile that acknowledged what had happened without giving Brandon the satisfaction of seeing me hurt or angry. Then I stood up slowly, deliberately, and picked up my coat from the back of my chair. I folded it carefully over my arm. I picked up my small shoulder bag. I did not rush. I did not storm out. I moved with quiet dignity. I walked past Jessica and Ryan, who looked down at their dessert plates. I walked past several of Brandon's friends who suddenly found their phones very interesting. I walked past Gerald, who opened his mouth as if to say something but could not seem to find the words. "Kent, wait," he started, but his voice trailed off. I just shook my head slightly and kept walking. I walked past Simone, who watched me with that same satisfied smile, clearly pleased that her worldview had been validated. And I walked right past Brandon. He had already turned back to his friends, laughing about something, acting as if I had never been there at all. He did not watch me leave. He did not call out. He did not apologize. He simply continued his party, as if nothing had happened. I walked through the main dining room of the restaurant, past other tables where families were celebrating birthdays and anniversaries, past waiters carrying trays of expensive food and wine. I walked out the front door into the cool Seattle night. It was 9 o'clock in early March, and the air was crisp and slightly damp. The street was busy with people walking to bars and clubs and theaters, living their Friday night lives completely unaware that my world had just shifted beneath my feet. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing in the cold air, letting it fill my lungs and clear my head. I felt a strange mixture of emotions. Hurt. Yes, deeply hurt. Embarrassed, definitely, at being humiliated in front of all those people. But also underneath all of that, something unexpected. Relief. Because now I knew. Now I knew exactly how my son saw me, how he valued me, what mattered to him. And knowing that truth, as painful as it was, felt better than living in uncertainty. I walked to my car in the parking garage, got in, and sat there for a few minutes before starting the engine. My hands gripped the steering wheel. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to be a good father, all the nights I had stayed up when Brandon was sick as a baby, rocking him back and forth, singing lullabies until he finally fell asleep. All the little league games where I had cheered from the bleachers, rain or shine. All the school plays where I had sat in uncomfortable auditorium seats, watching him perform. All the homework sessions where I had patiently explained math problems and science concepts. All the times I had told him I loved him, supported him, believed in him. And for what? To be called ordinary in front of a room full of strangers. To be dismissed and devalued and treated like an embarrassment. I felt tears trying to form in my eyes, but I blinked them back. I would not cry. Not yet. Not until I was safely home. I started the car and drove through the darkening streets of Seattle, past the gleaming downtown towers where people like Gerald and Simone worked, past the expensive condos where Brandon's friends probably lived, past all the markers of success that I had supposedly failed to achieve. I drove to my modest neighborhood, parked in my designated spot, and walked up 2 flights of stairs to my apartment. The apartment was exactly as I had left it that afternoon. Small but clean. 2 bedrooms, one of which I used as an office, and storage room. A living room with a second-hand couch and a coffee table I had found at a thrift store and refinished myself. A kitchen with basic appliances and mismatched dishes. Bookshelves lined with novels and biographies and old textbooks from my engineering days. Photos on the walls showing Brandon at various ages, always smiling, always loved. I dropped my coat on the couch and stood in the middle of the living room in the dark. I did not turn on any lights. I just stood there letting the silence wrap around me. After a while, I walked to my bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. I thought about calling a friend, maybe Tom, my old co-worker from my engineering days, who had stayed in touch over the years. But what would I say? That my son had publicly humiliated me, that I felt like a failure as a father. I did not have the energy for that conversation. Instead, I made a decision. I would not call Brandon. I would not text him. I would not reach out to apologize or explain or try to mend things. If he wanted to cut me out of his life because I was not impressive enough for him, then I would respect that decision. I had spent 10 years trying to prove to him that I was worthy of his love, despite not being wealthy or successful by conventional standards. Tonight had shown me that no amount of trying would ever be enough. He had made his choice clear. I also decided I would not change who I was or how I lived. I was proud of my cleaning business. I was proud of living modestly and authentically. I was proud of choosing peace and simplicity over stress and status. I did not need Brandon's approval to validate my choices. I did not need anyone's approval. I knew who I was and what mattered to me, and that was enough. What Brandon did not know, what no one except a few bankers and financial advisors knew, was that I was not actually struggling. I was not barely making ends meet. I was not ordinary in the way he thought. Hidden away in my bedroom closet was a filing cabinet containing documents that told a very different story. In 2010, 2 years before my marriage fell apart, I had developed something valuable. Working late nights in my home office, I had created a software algorithm that optimized data processing in a way that existing solutions could not match. It was elegant and efficient, solving a problem that many companies were struggling with. I filed for a patent, went through the lengthy approval process, and by 2011, I held a United States patent for my innovation. At the time, I did not think much about it. Patents are nice achievements, something to put on your resume, but they do not automatically translate into money. Many patents sit unused, collecting dust in filing cabinets. But my algorithm caught the attention of several companies. In 2015, a year after I had started my cleaning business and was living my simple new life, I received a call from TechCore Solutions, a major technology firm. They wanted to license my patent. Actually, they wanted to buy it outright. The negotiations took 3 months. In the end, they offered me $4.2 million. After taxes, I received roughly $2.8 million. It was more money than I had ever imagined having. More money than my parents had earned in their entire lifetimes combined. Life-changing money. But I did not change my life. At least not in the ways most people would have. I did not buy a mansion or a luxury car or a boat. I did not quit my cleaning business or start traveling the world. Instead, I did something much more boring and much more sensible. I invested it. I put a significant portion into low-cost index funds, spreading the investment across domestic and international stocks. I bought bonds for stability. I purchased my apartment outright, so I would never have to worry about rent or a mortgage. I bought a small rental property in Tacoma that generated about $2,000 a month in passive income after expenses. I worked with a fee-only financial advisor to create a diversified portfolio designed for long-term growth. Over the years, my investments performed well. The stock market generally trends upward over time, and I benefited from that growth. By now, 10 years after the patent sale, my net worth had grown to approximately $5.5 million. My investment portfolio generated about $180,000 per year in passive income through dividends, interest, and rental income. That was enough to live very comfortably without ever working again. But I kept working. I kept running my cleaning business, which brought in another $50,000 annually. Not because I needed the money, but because I genuinely enjoyed the work. I liked helping people. I liked the satisfaction of transforming a chaotic, messy space into something clean and organized. I liked the flexibility it gave me. I liked being my own boss. The income from the cleaning business was essentially pocket money that I often donated to local charities or used to help clients who were struggling financially. So when Brandon called me ordinary, when he dismissed me as just a cleaner, He had no idea he was talking about someone with a net worth larger than what Gerald and Simone had accumulated, despite their high salaries and expensive lifestyle. He had no idea that I could afford to buy a Malibu beach house myself if I wanted to. He had no idea that I was choosing to live modestly, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And that was intentional. I had deliberately kept this information from him. After the divorce, I watched how Gerald and Simone used money to win Brandon's affection. They bought him expensive gifts, took him on lavish vacations, gave him everything material he could want. I saw how Brandon started to equate love with spending, how he measured people's worth by their bank accounts and status symbols. I realized that if I told him about my wealth, it would corrupt our relationship even further. So I decided to let him think I was just an ordinary man, with an ordinary job and an ordinary income. I wanted to see if he could love me for who I was rather than what I had. I wanted to know if our relationship could be based on genuine connection rather than material value. Tonight, I got my answer, and it broke my heart. I sat on my bed, thinking about all of this, and then I did something that felt necessary. I turned off my phone completely. I did not want to hear from anyone. I needed silence, space-time, to process what had happened and decide how to move forward. I needed a night of peace to grieve the relationship I had thought I had with my son. I got ready for bed, brushed my teeth, changed into comfortable clothes, and lay down. I expected to lie awake for hours, replaying the evening in my mind, torturing myself with Brandon's words. But instead, I fell asleep quickly. There was something liberating about accepting the truth, about no longer trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. I slept deeply and dreamlessly, more peacefully than I had in months. While I was sleeping unaware and unplugged from the world, something was unfolding back at the restaurant and in the hours that followed. The moment I walked out of the private dining room, the atmosphere shifted. The confident, celebratory energy that had filled the space drained away, replaced by awkward silence and uncomfortable glances. Sarah, a young woman who had been Brandon's friend since freshman year at the University of Washington, set down her champagne glass with more force than necessary. The small clink drew attention. She looked directly at Brandon, who was already trying to redirect conversation back to his gifts. "That was pretty harsh, Brandon," she said, her voice cutting through the murmur of resumed conversation. Brandon turned to her, his expression defensive. "What I just told the truth. He is a cleaner. Why is everyone acting like I said something wrong?" Sarah shook her head slowly. "He is your father. He came all this way to celebrate your birthday, brought you a handmade gift, and you humiliated him in front of everyone." Brandon scoffed. "I did not humiliate him. I just pointed out facts. He cleans houses. That is what he does. It is not like I lied." Sarah stared at him for a long moment, her disappointment evident, then turned and walked away without another word. Several other friends who had witnessed the exchange exchanged glances, their discomfort palpable. The party continued, but the energy never fully recovered. People left earlier than planned, making excuses about early morning plans or long drives home. By 10:30, only a handful of guests remained, and even they seemed eager to leave. Brandon sensed something had shifted, but convinced himself that everyone was just tired, that it had nothing to do with how he had treated me. Gerald pulled Brandon aside onto the restaurant's outdoor terrace, where they could talk privately. The night air was cold, and their breath formed small clouds as they spoke. You should not have said that to Kent. Gerald began carefully. Brandon crossed his arms. Why does everyone keep saying that he is just a cleaner dad? It is embarrassing. Do you know how it looks when my friends ask what my other father does, and I have to tell them he cleans houses? Gerald was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. Your father used to be a brilliant software engineer, Brandon. One of the best I ever worked with. He gave up that career after our divorce. Brandon shrugged. So that was his choice. If he wanted to throw away his career, that is on him. Gerald tried again. He gave it up because he wanted more time with you. He was burned out from the industry, yes, but he also wanted a simpler life where he could be present for you whenever you needed him. Brandon's face showed no sympathy. Well, look how that turned out. He could have kept his career, made something of himself. Instead, he chose to be ordinary. Look at you and Simone. You both have amazing careers, a beautiful house, you travel, you have status. He has nothing. Gerald felt a wave of disappointment wash over him. He realized in that moment how much he and Simone had failed Brandon. They had taught him to value all the wrong things. But it is your birthday, Gerald said finally, not wanting to start a fight. Let's go back inside. They returned to the party, but Gerald carried a heavy feeling in his chest for the rest of the evening. He glanced at Simone, who was laughing with some of Brandon's friends, seemingly unbothered by what had happened. In fact, she looked pleased, as if Brandon's public dismissal of me had validated her long-held belief that I was beneath them. The party ended around 11 o'clock. Brandon, Gerald, and Simone said goodbye to the last few guests and headed to their respective homes. Brandon returned to his upscale apartment in the University District, the one Gerald paid for feeling frustrated that everyone had made such a big deal about what he said. He poured himself a whiskey and sat on his leather couch, the one Simone had helped him pick out from an expensive furniture store. As he sat there staring at the MacBook Pro his fathers had given him, something nagged at him. Maybe it was Sarah's look of disappointment. Maybe it was the way several friends had left early. Maybe it was just the late hour making him reflective. Whatever it was, he found himself opening his laptop and typing my name into Google. He added the words Seattle engineer and patent to the search. He expected to find nothing, or perhaps an old LinkedIn profile that would show I had been a mediocre engineer with a mediocre career. But the search results that appeared made him pause. The first link was to the United States Patent and Trademark Office website, showing a patent filed in 2010 with my name listed as the inventor. The title was technical and complex, something about optimized algorithms for data stream processing. Brandon clicked on the link and read through the patent abstract. The language was dense and technical, but he had taken enough computer science classes to understand the basics. This was not a trivial patent. This was sophisticated work solving real problems that major companies would care about. He sat back, surprised. His ordinary father who cleaned houses had developed this. He searched for more information about the patent. He found several forum discussions from technology websites where engineers had discussed my algorithm when it was first published. The comments were positive, calling it elegant and innovative. One commenter had written, "Whoever developed this really understands data architecture. This could be worth serious money to the right buyer." Brandon's heart started beating faster. He searched for information about the patent being sold or licensed. He tried various combinations of search terms. Finally, he found a brief article from a technology industry news website dated April 2015. The headline read, "Tech Core Solutions expands data infrastructure capabilities with key patent acquisition." The article mentioned that Tech Core had acquired a patent for data optimization from an independent inventor for an undisclosed sum part of their strategy to enhance their cloud computing services. Brandon searched for my name and TechCore together. He found nothing that specifically confirmed I had sold the patent to them, but the timing matched, and the description of the technology aligned with my patent. He searched for typical patent sale prices. What he found shocked him. Patents like mine, especially ones that solved real problems for major companies, typically sold for anywhere from $1 million to $5 million, sometimes more. His hands started shaking. He set down his whiskey glass before he dropped it. His mind raced through the implications. If I had sold that patent for even the low end of that range, say, $2 million, I would have walked away with over $1 million after taxes. If it was closer to $5 million, I could have netted $3 million or more. And that would have been 10 years ago. If I had invested it wisely, it could have grown significantly. Brandon thought about my modest apartment, my old car, my cleaning business. Why would I live that way if I had millions of dollars? Unless I chose to. Unless I wanted to live simply. Unless the whole time Brandon had been looking down on me for being poor, I had actually been wealthier than Gerald and Simone. The realization hit him like a freight train. All those times he had felt embarrassed about my job. All those times he had wished I was more successful like Gerald. All those times he had made excuses not to visit my apartment because it was not impressive enough. And all along I could have been living in a mansion myself. I could have been driving a luxury car. I could have been flaunting wealth. But I chose not to. Why? The question screamed in Brandon's mind. Why would I live modestly if I did not have to? The only answer that made sense was that I wanted to see if he would love me for who I was, rather than what I had. It was a test, and Brandon had failed spectacularly. Panic set in. Brandon grabbed his phone and called me. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times, then went to voicemail. My recorded message played. "You have reached Kent. Please leave a message." Beep. Dad Brandon said, his voice tight with anxiety. "I need to talk to you. Please call me back." He hung up and immediately called again. This time it went straight to voicemail, which meant I had turned my phone off. Brandon tried again, and again, and again. Each call went directly to voicemail. He left message after message, each one more desperate than the last. "Dad, please pick up. I am sorry. I need to explain. Dad, I found out about the patent. Please call me. I was wrong about everything. Please." He lost count of how many times he called. 20 times. 25 times. Each unanswered call increased his panic. He switched to text messages. "Dad, please call me. I am so sorry about what I said tonight. I found out about your patent and the sale. Why did you not tell me? Please, I need to talk to you." He sent message after message, his fingers flying over the phone's keyboard. I was wrong. So wrong. You are not ordinary. You never were. I am the one who is ordinary. Please talk to me. Nothing. No response. No indication that I had even seen the messages. Brandon looked at the time. It was almost 1 in the morning. He called Gerald. It took several rings before Gerald answered, his voice thick with sleep. "Brandon, what is wrong? Do you know what time it is? Did you know about Dad's patent?" Brandon demanded, his voice loud and frantic. "What patent?" Gerald asked, confused. The one he sold for millions. Brandon practically shouted. How could you not tell me? Gerald sat up in bed, now fully awake. What are you talking about? I knew he had a patent, but I did not know he sold it for that much. Where are you getting this information? Brandon explained what he had found online. The articles, the forum discussions, the typical sale prices for similar patents. Gerald was quiet for a long moment. I knew he sold it for something, Gerald admitted slowly, but he never told me how much. I assumed it was a few $100,000 at most, enough to live comfortably, but nothing extravagant. Brandon's voice broke. He has been living in that small apartment, driving that old car, running that cleaning business, and all along he could afford everything we have. More probably. Why did he do that? Why did he hide it? Gerald sighed heavily. Because he wanted you to love him for who he is, not what he has. Brandon, your father is a good man. He made a choice to live simply and authentically. And tonight you told him that made him worthless. Brandon felt like he was going to be sick. I need to talk to him. He is not answering his phone. Gerald's voice was gentle but firm. Then give him space. You hurt him badly tonight. He probably needs time to process. But I need to apologize. Brandon insisted. I need to explain. Gerald said quietly, You can apologize when he is ready to hear it. For now, let him be. They hung up, but Brandon could not follow that advice. He kept calling, kept texting, kept leaving voicemails, each one more desperate and apologetic than the last. By 3 a.m, he had called me 30 times and sent 25 text messages. His phone showed 0 responses. He finally fell into an exhausted sleep on his couch, still clutching his phone, waiting for a response that would not come. I woke up the next morning at 7 o'clock, feeling surprisingly rested. Sunlight streamed through my bedroom window, painting the walls golden. I stretched, feeling muscles I had tensed the night before slowly relax. I got out of bed and padded to the kitchen in my bare feet. The apartment was quiet and peaceful. I made a pot of coffee, the familiar ritual, soothing and grounding. As the coffee brewed, I stood by my small kitchen window, looking out at the street below, where a few early morning joggers passed by, and a neighbor walked their dog. For the first time in years, I felt truly at peace with myself. Last night had been painful, yes, but it had also been clarifying. I no longer had to wonder where I stood with Brandon. I no longer had to question whether our relationship was genuine. I knew the truth, and while it hurt, there was freedom in that knowledge. I poured myself a cup of coffee, added a splash of milk, and carried it to my small balcony, where I sat in the cool morning air. Then I remembered my phone. I had turned it off last night and had not turned it back on. I walked back inside, found it on my bedroom nightstand, and powered it on. The screen lit up, and immediately notifications began flooding in. 27 missed calls from Brandon, 9 voicemails, 28 text messages, also 3 calls from Gerald, and 2 from a number I did not recognize that had left no message. I sat down on my couch and opened the text messages from Brandon. The first few were variations on Dad. Please call me. Then they shifted. I found out about the patent. Why did you not tell me? Then they became increasingly frantic. I am so sorry. I was wrong about everything. Please talk to me. The most recent one, sent at 2:47 in the morning, simply said, Dad, I love you. Please do not give up on me. I set the phone down and stared at it. So he had discovered the truth. He had done some research and figured out that I was not the struggling, ordinary man he thought I was. Now he wanted to talk, not because he had suddenly developed respect for cleaning as a profession, not because he had realized that a person's worth is not determined by their bank account, but because he had learned I was secretly wealthy. The irony was sharp and painful. For 10 years I had lived modestly, hoping Brandon would love me regardless of money. Last night he had proven he did not. Now discovering the money, he suddenly wanted to apologize and reconnect. But his apology was not about understanding why his words hurt me. It was about realizing he had misjudged my financial status. I did not call him back. Not yet. I was not angry, not anymore. I was just tired. Tired of trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Tired of being tested and found wanting. Tired of the whole situation. I finished my coffee, took a shower, and got dressed. It was Saturday, which meant I had work scheduled. 3 houses to clean today. My clients were expecting me, and I was not going to let them down because of personal drama. At 8:30 in the morning, my doorbell rang. I was not expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Brandon standing in the hallway. He looked awful. His hair was messy. His clothes were wrinkled, like he had slept in them. His eyes were red and puffy. He looked like he had not slept at all. I hesitated my hand on the doorknob, debating whether to open it. Finally, I did. Brandon looked up at me with an expression of pure misery. "Dad," he said, his voice cracking. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, wordlessly. He walked in slowly, looking around my apartment as if seeing it for the first time. He took in the modest furniture, the well-worn couch, the bookshelves packed with paperbacks and library books, the framed photos of him at various ages covering the walls. His eyes lingered on a photo from his 10th birthday, taken just months before the divorce, showing the 3 of us, Gerald, me, and Brandon, smiling at the camera, arms around each other. Happy. "Why did you not tell me?" Brandon finally asked, turning to face me. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Tell you what?" I replied calmly, though my heart was pounding. About the patent, about the money, about everything. He gestured vaguely at the apartment. About why you live like this when you do not have to. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself another cup of coffee. I did not offer him any. "Why does it matter?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Brandon looked at me like I had asked the most incomprehensible question imaginable. "Because I said terrible things last night. I called you ordinary. I said you just clean houses. But you are not ordinary. You are rich, probably richer than Dad and Simone." I took a sip of my coffee and looked at him steadily. "And that changes something," Brandon stammered. Yes, I mean, no. I mean, I do not know." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Why did you let me think you were struggling? Why did you hide it?" I walked to my living room and sat down on the couch. I gestured for Brandon to sit in the chair across from me. He did, perching nervously on the edge. "Brandon," I said slowly, carefully. I had a choice after the divorce. I could keep climbing the corporate ladder, keep chasing promotions and raises, keep trying to accumulate more wealth and status. Or I could step back, find peace, and focus on what actually matters. I chose the second option. I sold the patent because I did not need to work in tech anymore. The money gave me freedom. Freedom to choose work I enjoyed rather than work that impressed people. I started the cleaning business because I genuinely like it. I help people create clean, organized spaces in their lives. That brings me real joy and satisfaction. I do not need a fancy job title or a beach house in Malibu to feel successful." Brandon's face crumpled. "I was so cruel to you," he said, and tears started rolling down his cheeks. "I judged you for choosing happiness over status. I thought money and appearances were everything. Simone and Dad, they taught me to think that way. But they were wrong. And I was wrong." I did not say anything. I just let him talk, let him process. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "Can you forgive me?" he asked, his voice breaking. I looked at my son, this young man I had loved from the moment he was born, and I felt my heart ache. "Brandon," I said gently, "forgiveness is not really the issue here. The issue is whether you understand why what you said was hurtful. Not because I am secretly rich and you misjudged my financial status, but because you dismissed my choices, my work, my entire life as worthless. Even if I really was just an ordinary cleaner with no money in the bank, I would still deserve your respect. I am still your father. I still love you unconditionally. And that should have been enough." Brandon nodded slowly, and I saw something shift in his eyes. Real understanding, maybe for the first time. "You are absolutely right," he said quietly. "Whether you had millions or nothing, I should not have treated you that way. I have been living in this bubble of privilege where I thought money equals worth. I forgot what really matters. I forgot that the best things in life are not things at all." "So what are you going to do about it?" I asked. He looked up at me confused. "What do you mean?" I said that realizing you were wrong is just the first step. What are you going to do to change? How are you going to prove that you have actually learned something from this?" Brandon was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know yet," he admitted. "But I want to change. I want to be better. Tell me what to do." I looked at my son, sitting across from me, genuinely contrite for what seemed like the first time in years. And I made a decision. "If you want to rebuild our relationship," I said carefully, "I have some conditions." Brandon leaned forward. "Anything. Dad. Whatever it takes." "First," I said, "you need to get a real job. Not an internship that Dad pays for, or some cushy position that Simone arranges through her connections. A real job where you earn your own money, doing work that most people do. Something that will teach you what it actually means to work for a living. Second, you spend 1 day a week with me, working at the cleaning business. You are going to learn what I do. Understand why I chose this work, and see the people we help. You are going to scrub floors and clean toilets and organize closets alongside me. Third, you apologize to everyone who was at that party. Publicly. You are going to tell them you were wrong. Explain what you learned and own your mistake. Fourth, you figure out what you actually value. Not what Gerald values, not what Simone values, but what you, Brandon, believe is important in life. What kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to live? And I am not talking about career goals or income targets. I am talking about character, about how you treat people, about what will actually make you happy in the long run. Brandon stared at me. "You want me to clean houses?" he asked slowly, as if making sure he understood correctly. I nodded. "I want you to understand the dignity in all honest work. I want you to see that no job is beneath you as long as you do it with integrity and care. I want you to learn humility. Brandon swallowed hard. "Okay," he said finally. "I will do it. All of it." "When do we start?" "2 weeks from today," I replied. "That gives you time to find a job and prepare yourself mentally for what this is going to require." Brandon nodded. "Can I ask you something?" he said hesitantly. "Of course. Why did you really keep the money secret? Was it just to test me?" I considered the question carefully. Partly, I admitted. After the divorce, I watched how Gerald and Simone used money to, let's say, win your affection. They bought you expensive things, took you on fancy vacations, gave you every material advantage. And I saw how you started to measure people's worth by their wealth and status. I realized that if I told you about my money, it would corrupt our relationship even further. You would start respecting me because I was rich, not because I was your father who loved you. So I decided to live modestly and see if you could love me for who I am, rather than what I have. And I failed that test, Brandon said quietly. You did, I agreed. But the good news is that you now have a chance to retake it. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, Brandon showed up at my apartment wearing old jeans, a faded t-shirt, and sneakers he clearly used for yard work. He looked nervous but determined. I handed him a pair of yellow rubber gloves and a caddy filled with cleaning supplies. He took them without complaint. We loaded everything into my van and drove to our first job. The clients were a young family, a nurse named Patricia and her husband Marcus, who worked construction with twin 4-year-old daughters. They lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in South Seattle. When we arrived, Patricia greeted us at the door, looking exhausted. "Thank you so much for coming," she said. "I have been working double shifts all week, and the house is just—" She gestured helplessly at the chaos visible behind her. "We will take care of it," I assured her. Patricia left for her shift at the hospital, and Marcus took the twins to the park to give us space to work. Brandon stood in the entrance, looking overwhelmed. The living room was a disaster zone of toys, blankets, and scattered books. The kitchen had dishes piled in the sink and counters covered with food prep remnants. Laundry was piled in baskets and overflowing from the hamper. It was the kind of mess that accumulates when hard-working parents are stretched too thin. "Let's get started," I said, handing Brandon a mop. We spent the next 4 hours working. Brandon scrubbed floors on his hands and knees. He washed dishes until his hands were pruny. He organized toys into bins, folded laundry, wiped down surfaces, vacuumed carpets, and cleaned bathrooms. He got cleaning solution in his eyes and had to rinse them out at the sink. He complained his back hurt from bending over. He was sweating and tired and clearly uncomfortable. But by the time we finished, the house was transformed. The floors gleamed. The kitchen sparkled. The living room was organized and welcoming. The bathrooms were spotless. Brandon stood in the middle of the living room, dirty and exhausted, looking at what we had accomplished. Patricia came home with Marcus and the twins just as we were finishing. When she walked through the door and saw the house, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God," she breathed. "I cannot, this is thank you so much." She looked at me, then at Brandon. "You have no idea what this means. I work so hard, but there is never enough time, and coming home to chaos just makes everything harder. Now I can actually rest on my day off tomorrow instead of spending it cleaning." One of the twins ran up to Brandon and hugged his leg. "Thank you for making our house pretty," she said in her little voice. Brandon looked down at her, then at Patricia's grateful face, then at me. Something shifted in his expression. For the first time, I think he understood. This was not just cleaning. This was helping real people manage their real lives. This mattered. On the drive back to my apartment, Brandon was quiet. Finally, he said, "That felt really good." I nodded. "This is what I do, Brandon. This is why I am proud of my work. It is not glamorous. It does not impress people at cocktail parties, but it makes a real difference in people's lives." Over the next several weeks, Brandon kept his promises. He got a job as a barista at a local independent coffee shop. The pay was $15 an hour, and he worked 30 hours a week. When Gerald and Simone found out, they were appalled. "Why would you work at a coffee shop?" Gerald asked. "You have a degree from the University of Washington. You could be working at a consulting firm." "Because I need to earn my own way," Brandon replied. "I need to understand what it means to actually work." The coffee shop job was harder than Brandon expected. He had to wake up at 5 in the morning for opening shifts. He had to learn how to make dozens of different coffee drinks. He dealt with rude customers who complained about everything. He cleaned up spills, scrubbed espresso machines, and took out smelly trash. He worked alongside college students trying to pay their tuition, single mothers working second jobs, and immigrants sending money back to their families in other countries. For the first time in his life, Brandon heard real stories of struggle and resilience. His co-worker, Mariella, told him about crossing the border as a teenager and working 3 jobs to support her younger siblings. His co-worker, Jamal, explained how he was putting himself through community college while supporting his grandmother. His co-worker, Emma, a single mom, talked about juggling 2 kids this job and night classes to become a dental hygienist. Brandon began to see these people not as background characters in his privileged life, but as real human beings with dreams and challenges and dignity. He learned their names. He asked about their families. He covered shifts when they needed help. And slowly, he started to change. Every Saturday, he came to work with me. We cleaned houses together. He stopped complaining about the work and started taking pride in doing it well. He began to see the people we helped not as clients, but as individuals whose lives we were improving. An elderly woman who could no longer clean because of arthritis. A family who both worked full-time and needed help keeping their home manageable. A young professional recovering from surgery who could not do physical labor yet. Then came the hardest part of Brandon's promises. He had to apologize publicly to everyone who had been at his birthday party. He rented a small event space at the coffee shop, where he worked a cozy corner with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. He sent personal invitations to 15 of the people who had witnessed his cruelty to me, including Sarah and several others who had seemed uncomfortable that night. On a Wednesday evening they gathered. Some came out of curiosity, others because they genuinely cared about Brandon and wanted to see if he had changed. When everyone had arrived and settled with coffee or tea, Brandon stood up. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady. "I owe you all an apology," he began. "At my birthday party 2 months ago, I publicly disrespected my father in front of you. I called him ordinary. I dismissed his work as just cleaning houses. I compared him unfavorably to my other father and his wealthy lifestyle. I was wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. Not because I later learned that my father is actually quite successful and financially secure, though that is true, but because even if he was exactly what I thought he was, just a regular person with a modest job and a simple life, he would still deserve respect. He is my father. He raised me with love and patience. He made sacrifices for me, and none of that should be conditional on his income or status." Brandon paused, his voice thick with emotion. I am learning now that success is not about money or appearances or impressing people. It is about integrity, kindness, and doing work that matters to you. It is about treating people with dignity regardless of their job or bank account. My father chose a simple, meaningful life over status and wealth. That does not make him ordinary. That makes him brave. And I am ashamed that it took me this long to see that. I am sorry you had to witness my cruelty. And I am grateful to those of you who called me out on it, because you helped me realize I needed to change. There was silence for a moment. Then Sarah stood up and walked over to Brandon. She hugged him. "That takes real courage," she said. "I am proud of you." Others came forward too, shaking his hand, patting his shoulder, telling him they appreciated his honesty. Not everyone forgave him immediately. Some people left without saying much, but most seemed to recognize that his apology was genuine and his effort to change was real. 3 months passed. Brandon continued working at the coffee shop and spending Saturdays with me. We developed a new routine. He would come to my apartment early Saturday morning. We would have coffee together and talk about his week. Then we would head out to our cleaning jobs. During our drives between houses, we had long conversations about life, values, relationships, and what really matters. One Saturday, as we were driving back from our last job, Brandon said, "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. What are you going to do with all that money?" "I mean, you cannot just let it sit there forever, right?" I shrugged. "I live off the investment income. The principal just keeps growing. When I die, it will go to you, assuming you continue to prove you can handle it responsibly." Brandon was quiet for a moment. "I do not want it. Yet," he finally said. "I want to keep earning my own way for a while longer. I need to prove to myself that I can make it without anyone's help." I smiled. "Good. That is exactly the right answer. Maybe in a few years, when you have built your own life and learned your own lessons, we will talk about it again. But for now, just focus on becoming the person you want to be." That evening, Brandon stayed for dinner at my apartment. We ordered pizza and watched a baseball game on my old television. It was simple, ordinary, and perfect. At one point during a commercial break, Brandon looked at me and said, "You know what is funny?" What I replied, "All those years I was embarrassed about your apartment, your car, your job. But now, sitting here eating pizza with you, I am happier than I ever was in Dad and Simone's mansion with all their expensive stuff. This feels real." I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. "That is because it is real," I said. Now, almost a year after that painful birthday party, I sit in my modest apartment, reflecting on everything that has happened. The hurt I felt that night was profound, one of the deepest wounds I have ever experienced. Being called ordinary by my own son, being dismissed and devalued in front of a room full of strangers, cut deeper than any professional failure or personal setback ever had. But in hindsight, I can see that it was a necessary pain. If Brandon had not said those cruel words, if I had not been pushed to that breaking point, we might have continued in our superficial relationship indefinitely. I would have kept trying to earn his approval while he continued to measure my worth by the wrong metrics. The crisis forced both of us to confront uncomfortable truths. For Brandon, it forced him to examine his values, to question what he had been taught about success and worth, to understand that money and status are poor measures of a person's value. He had to learn humility, empathy, and gratitude. He had to experience what it means to work hard for modest pay, to serve people without expecting recognition, to find satisfaction in simple, honest labor. For me, it forced me to accept that I could not control whether Brandon loved or respected me. I could only control my own actions and choices. I had to let go of my need for his approval and find peace in knowing I had lived according to my values, even if that made me ordinary in his eyes. The journey back to each other was not easy or quick. There were awkward moments, difficult conversations, times when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But slowly, week by week, Saturday by Saturday, we rebuilt our relationship on a foundation of honesty, mutual respect, and shared values rather than expectations and conditions. Brandon still works at the coffee shop, though he has been promoted to shift supervisor. He still helps me clean houses every Saturday, and he genuinely enjoys it now. He has moved out of the expensive apartment Gerald was paying for and into a modest place he can afford on his own. He drives a used car he bought with his own savings. He has learned to live within his means and find joy in simplicity. His relationship with Gerald and Simone has become more complex. He still loves them and sees them regularly, but he has established boundaries. He politely declines their offers to buy him expensive things or pay for luxuries. He has explained to them that he needs to earn his own way for a while to figure out who he is apart from their wealth and status. Gerald, to his credit, has come to respect this. Simone still does not fully understand, but she has at least stopped making dismissive comments about my choices or my life. I still run my cleaning business. I still live in my modest apartment and drive my reliable older car. And I am still, by most conventional standards, ordinary. But I have learned something important. Being ordinary is not an insult. It is actually a profound gift. When you are ordinary, you are free from the exhausting pressure to constantly impress people. You are free from the need to prove your worth through achievements or possessions. You are free to simply be yourself. To do work you find meaningful, to live according to your own values rather than society's expectations. Brandon understands this now in a way he did not before. When people at the coffee shop ask what his family does, he says with genuine pride, "My dad runs a cleaning business. He helps people create order and peace in their homes. He is the happiest person I know." And when his wealthy friends from university occasionally ask why he is working as a barista when he could be in a corporate job, he smiles and says, "Because I am learning what really matters. The money is still there, sitting in investment accounts, quietly growing. But it no longer defines our relationship. Brandon knows about it, but he does not think about it much. He has learned that wealth is a tool, not a goal, and that the truly valuable things in life love, respect, integrity. Purpose cannot be bought or measured in dollars. People often ask me why I never told Brandon about the money sooner, why I let him think I was struggling, why I endured his judgment and dismissal. The answer is simple. I wanted him to see me. Not my bank account, not my past accomplishments, not my potential to fund his lifestyle. Just me. The real me. A person who chose peace over prestige, meaning over money, and authenticity over approval. And sometimes the most ordinary choices we make, the simplest paths we walk, turn out to be the most extraordinary gifts we can give. Because in the end, being ordinary means being real, being present, being true to yourself. And that is something no amount of money can ever buy. So let me ask you, have you ever been judged for choosing a simpler life when the world told you to chase more? Have you ever been underestimated by someone who did not understand your reasons? Have you ever chosen authenticity over approval, even when it cost you relationships or respect. I would love to hear your story in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think about what really matters in life, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. And please subscribe to this channel, because we share stories about real people facing real challenges and finding real wisdom. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, someone who is struggling with similar issues, someone who needs to be reminded that their worth is not determined by their bank account or job title. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for taking the time to understand that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be yourself unapologetically and authentically, even when others cannot see your value. I hope you take care of yourselves. Treat others with kindness regardless of their status, and remember that the most valuable things in life are not the ones you can buy. They are the ones you choose to live by. Take care, and I will see you in the next story.